Hi everyone, welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. I'm your host Rajni Bharara, and before I move ahead, let me read out this very important disclaimer. By watching our videos, you agree and understand that the information provided by our attorneys and guests, including comments and replies from users, is not legal advice. Use of information is at your own risk. Welcome back, everyone, to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Like I said, I'm your host, Rajni Bharara, and today we are here to discuss the latest trends and insights in immigration law and employment opportunities. Well, I'm thrilled to have you all join us with us today, and I want to again extend a heartfelt welcome to all of our viewers today. Thank you for joining us. Your interest in these important topics is what makes this show very, very special. So, thank you again. And today we have a very special guest joining us. Erin Green, an esteemed immigration attorney and an H-1B visa expert. Erin brings over 20 years of corporate management experience, working with clients ranging from venture startups to large multinational corporations. He is the founder of EEG Immigration Law Group, where he provides exceptional legal services and strategic solutions for complex corporate immigration issues. Erin has a remarkable track record, having overseen thousands of immigration petitions for high tech, defense, and biotech companies. He has served as the exclusive U.S. immigration advisor to the American Israeli Chamber of Commerce and has extensive relationships with Department of State officials representing corporate clients at the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv. In addition to his legal practice, Erin is a passionate educator, frequently delivering presentations on immigration processes and compliance to large audience across the country. His commitment to transparent service and dedication to his clients truly sets him apart in this field. Today, we'll be diving into an important topic: H-1B visas, current trends, fraud crackdowns, and what to expect next with none other than Erin Green. We'll explore the latest developments in H-1B visa sponsorship, discuss the recent crackdowns on fraud within the system, and look ahead to what applicants can expect in the upcoming year 2025. So without any further ado, let's welcome Erin Green to the show, everyone. Erin, welcome to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. How are you doing?
Hey, good to be here. Doing good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you on the show, Erin. Thank you for agreeing to be a part of the show. And guys, we have Erin's details displayed on screen in case you want to write it down. So you can write down his phone number, his email, and his website in case you want to get in touch with him. So make sure you do that. Now, Erin, without any further ado, I know we are here to talk about H-1B, but before I do that, I actually want to talk to you about, the picks of Trump's administration. I mean, the picks that Trump has had in past few days of in the last few 1 month for his administration. So, Erin, how do you anticipate these appointments are going to influence immigration policy, and particularly regarding H-1B visa?
I think the new administration will be very strong on the border, on preventing the mass illegal waves of immigrants coming in. That's the focus. That's what he ran on. That's the people he's putting in place. Mr. Holman and all these others are going to be focused on that. What we have right now is a free, open border on our Mexican side where anyone can just walk in. I'm completely against the asylum scam that is going on and the ways that the the current administration has ignored immigration law to levels that are just unexplainable. For those of you who don't know, asylum means you're in a country, but you have to get out. You have to flee. You're in fear of your life. The government's going to come and kill you or cause harm to you. And if you can get to the next closest country, you're supposed to file an asylum claim and be there until your case is heard. Unfortunately, while we do have a lot of poor people coming from these countries that just want to work, they do not qualify for asylum. And asylum was not created for someone who just happens to need a job or to be poor or maybe lower class. But what they've done the last 4 years, and even before that, they've allowed these folks to come in illegally using this asylum. It's a big scam, and the government's perpetrating it. So to get back to your point, I think most of the efforts will be on securing a border, like every country needs, allowing people to come in legally, allowing real asylum claims to be heard, and hopefully not allowing millions and millions of these phony asylum claims to be perpetuated. With regard to the H-1B in the business community, I happen to think that Trump is a businessman. People working with him are looking to increase the economy. The economy has been down the last 4 years. We've had inflation. We've had a lot of problems. So on the business side, I expect things to get better, get smoother. Hopefully wait times will go down. And we'll see better processing and intakes of cases. And those are some of the things I'm looking forward to. There's a lot of fear mongering out there done by whether it's law firms or just particular political interests who always want to fear monger and hope for the worst. But we don't see any evidence of that. For what we see so far is a business friendly administration like we saw last time.
Okay. But Erin, a lot of people are also saying that it's not only going to Trump and his administration are not only going to go after the legal ones, the illegal ones, but also it's going to be bad for the legal ones and strict scrutiny. And, basically, it's not going to be good, not just for the illegal ones, but also for the legal ones too. So what do you have to say about this? Do you think it's going to be hard or bad for the legal immigrants too?
I don't think so. I don't think. I mean, we've seen 4 years of this administration. In my firm, we processed hundreds, thousands of H-1Bs. Certainly, where they're stricter on, for example, third-party client-side cases, and then it goes back. We've seen trends where there's more RFEs, and then less RFEs, and then more RFEs, and then RFEs targeted. We see them coming in trends. But the trends don't really correlate with the administration that's in power. It doesn't matter. It seems like they are more internal, and they just seem to adjudicate in different ways in trends. So if you're talking about H-1B adjudications, it's hard to predict what the next trend will be. I mean, for example, I can tell you 20 years ago when we used to do L1s, L1As, and L1Bs, L1As would never get an RFE. They were so straightforward. For example, if you flash forward 12 to 15 years, you have them starting to RFE L1s as a trend, and L1As particularly. And so there's nothing correlating with the law or changes in law or changes in administration. It just seems to be internal trends that seem to come up and down, with what we see in our data. But I don't predict any stiff change where they're going to say, oh, we're not accepting H-1Bs. They can't do that. I don't see how they would do that or why they would do that. That would just harm the business community.
Okay. But do you expect any changes in the H-1B lottery process with the new administration?
So to give you a little bit about background about the H-1B lottery, as you know, before they went to this electronic system the last couple of years, they had just the lotteries where you prepared the entire case and you sent it in with your filing fees, which were a lot. Then they would do the lottery, and then they'd send the ones back that didn't have the paper, that didn't get accepted in the lottery. Then they went to an electronic system, which they forego all that paper being produced and sent in and all that mail, which is smart. However, it kind of opened up the door a little bit for easier methods of fraud. But I don't know if you're going to ask me about fraud, but before we get to that, I don't see it. And are you asking about how the process has changed this year's particularly from the years prior?
No, yeah.
Well, okay. So let's talk about the fraud, for example. So when they announced that they were going to electronic, I said in my head, I said it right away. It just popped in my head. I said, this is going to be a catalyst, and we're going to see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of more applications. Not necessarily because the economy is better or they're needed, but because it's going to be easier to do fraud. Because think about it. When the fraudsters come together and they put these ploys in just to get H-1B approvals or lottery applications, the law is that you can't. So if you have a related company, you can't submit multiple applications for the same H-1B applicant. But if the companies are not related, you can do that. When they went to an electronic, now, of course, there was fraud existing before, Companies could do that, and they were willing to submit these huge applications with all the fees. And I guess if they got more than one applicant accepted, they would lose a little bit on the fees, right? When you go to an electronic system and you don't have to send any fees in, you're just entering names and maybe their birth dates and passports, etc. Then you have less overhead. The fraud scams have less overhead in terms of having to put all those fees up front. So what happened is they got a little bit smart, and I predicted it. If to get around the law, if you think about it legally, if let's say 20 people came together and opened 20 different companies, okay? But none of those people were related or had any other ownership interest or relationship with any of the other 20 companies, right? So you have 20 different companies. However, now let's say they have 100 people and they want to get them H-1Bs, right? So let's say each one of those 20 companies enters those 100 people into the system, and they could do that because technically they're not related, although it is technically a fraud scheme because let's say they're colluding to do that. That's where it can become so much easier to perpetuate fraud with the new electronic system. But now we see a lot of crackdowns going on. So they're getting a lot smarter. I think this year, what they've done differently is they're starting to, they're asking for the passport number of the individuals now. So this year, what they've done is they're looking at the individual. So if they're accepted, supposedly they're not accepting them again. If that makes sense, if that same individual has, and they announced that in their bulletin in January, and they've done that supposedly. So that's one way that they're cutting back on the fraud schemes. And then the other way is they're doing a lot more investigations into the filers when they see that.
Right.
For example, I have a company now, and we were doing an H-1B, and then we got an RFE or a notice of intent to deny, which is similar to an RFE. And it talked about the past filing from the CAP, which I've never seen one of those before. And it was talking about, so the person we were filing for our company, but they had been accepted in the CAP for another company. And they were looking into the companies and asking questions about the companies prior. So you can see that they're on to these companies now who are doing that, which is a good thing, which will make it more fair for everyone who needs H-1Bs.
Okay. So hopefully it's going to be all good for the H-1Bs at least, and also for the immigrants.
Yeah, I think so. The only changes for next year, I think, is they're going to probably implement instead of $10 to enter someone, I think it's going to be $200. And they wanted to do it this year, but at the last minute, they decided to keep the $10 fee in place. So it'll be a little bit more. I think it'll be $200 per person you want to register.
Okay.
Which is interesting. But other than that, I don't know if they're going to change much from this year's fiscal year cap to next year. We don't have the announcements yet, but they usually start announcing them around this time. And then in January, they start coming out with announcements and changes if they want to make any. But I can tell you 780,000 caps last year was not a result of the economy. It was, I mean, if you look at versus the previous years, it's several 100,000 more. It's, that was because it was easier, and I predicted it. It was easier because you don't have to file all the, and they've gotten smarter in how they're doing it and set up these fake phony H-1B. We used to call them job shops when I worked at Infosys, and they're out there. They crack down on them, but they're out there. I can explain what that is if you want, or we can move on.
Yeah, please go ahead. We would like to know more about it. Yeah.
So when you're looking at an H-1B, a job shop, so technical staffing companies like yourself can have legitimate jobs and legitimate clients. And the requirement is technically that you're supposed to have a bona fide offer of employment for the employee that you're submitting the H-1B for. What the job shops do, and your H-1B employees or applicants or people who want to get H-1Bs have to be very wary of them, is they come along and they try and they say they can get you H-1Bs. They don't really have jobs lined up that are ready to go, bona fide job offers. They just try, and some of the other things they do is they try to take money from the employees. So anybody out there who's looking to get an H-1B, be very wary of these job shops. What they're doing is they're making a profit by trying to get H-1B lottery numbers in high volume and then utilizing those by placing people in the U.S. after the fact. Whereas a legitimate staffing company or a legitimate IT consulting company will obviously have clients and have jobs ready and available and file based on those jobs. And even when they're entering the lottery, should have that those jobs in place. There's a little bit of a difference there, you can see.
Okay. But hopefully now that Trump is going to be back with this strict administration, it's going to, if not completely go away, at least it's going to be slowed down, right?
I really don't know in terms of enforcement and investigations and audits. I mean, even during the Trump administration, we saw times when there were more audits and more and less audits. For example, FDNS audits are random site visits, which they do on H-1Bs and L-1s, where they're supposed to come to the office or the place of work. A lot of the officers are lazy and they'll just email you. But so I can tell you the last 4 years, we hadn't seen a lot of them. I've seen very, very few. I just even got one recently. But so I can tell you just within the last 4 years, there was like virtually none. And then maybe now lately a little bit of ramping up, but it's very sporadic. So it's hard to say that just because this administration comes in, there's going to be more FDNS visits and we're going to do a lot of them or but in any case, a legitimate H-1B should not be worried about an FDNS site visit. They're very straightforward. They want some documentation. We did tons of those when I worked at Infosys. And so it's not something that should alarm anyone. And even if you get an FDNS site visit, they're looking just to make sure that what's in the application matches what's on the ground. That's basically all they are.
Okay. Thank you for answering the question, Erin. Now, I would also like to know about, because in Trump's last administration, this Buy American, Hire American was his initiative, right? So how do you foresee this policy actually being reinforced or maybe altered in this new term, especially, concerning H-1B visa holders?
Yeah. So the argument, the H-1B argument on are H-1Bs good for America and the economy versus are H-1Bs taking American jobs has been going on for a long time now, at least the debate back and forth. I could probably argue both sides. But more likely for starters, let's look at it this way. We have the most IT jobs in the world here. I think that's a fact. Statistically, anyone will know that. We have universities and our Americans who go to study, and they don't really go into the computer engineering or these IT fields. A lot of the STEM fields, they're very weak on that. We have such a high demand, and those jobs are here and plentiful, and they need to be filled by foreign workers, for example, H-1Bs, whether they're studying here or whether they're coming abroad to work. So the argument is that the American kids just simply don't go into this field. And I think there's a lot of statistics to back that up. I don't have them on me, but I've lectured about this and I've talked about this in different places. So there's a great need for IT workers specifically. And when you're talking about H-1Bs, as you know, the vast majority of H-1Bs are IT fields and certainly STEM fields. So you can make the argument that this is a much needed, our economy needs these workers to come in, these H-1Bs to come in and do this work. The flip side is sometimes what happens is these companies, whether it's Wipro or Tata or Infosys, they come in and they do an efficient job. They have clients who have, at least in the past, have had their own legacy IT departments. And what happens sometimes is that these vendors will come in, these companies, and do a great job. They'll hire them and they'll completely replace the IT department. So let's say there were 200 Americans working there, or mostly Americans, and then you bring in someone like a Wipro or a Capgemini or an Infosys. They come in and they just basically take over the whole function for the company. And this is where you can see a lot of American workers being laid off, and then it becomes a political issue, and then it gets into the press. And even though it might not be that many workers at the end of the day, it could be a whole IT department of a company, a major company. Sometimes they're replaced or rehauled. and then you can see the political drama that unfolds. Well, here you can see people are talking about losing their jobs or having to train the replacements in many of the situations, and I've seen that. I would tend to think that there's more. I would tend to think that if there is a robust IT hiring here, where there's just so many jobs, that if those folks are really talented, they will find jobs. Number one. But I can see the argument where you have specific cases, and they're more emotional cases because they're more like one-on-ones. But you can get a lot of sense of when a whole IT department is replaced and the new folks coming in, they had to transfer knowledge. I can see that argument. So I can see both sides, but I really tend to think that if those folks were really talented folks or needed, that they could find jobs when those kinds of changes happen.
Right. So now everything will boil down to the talent and the skill that the person possesses.
Yeah. Now, as far as Trump, he's business friendly. I mean, he's coming in to make the economy grow again, and we want to be the best in the world. I think he knows and he realizes, and I have seen interviews with him in the past, from the last time, where he's acknowledging that fact about the H-1B. So when you read all these articles coming out about, Trump's going to do and Trump's going to do, a lot of it is fear mongering. A lot of these people just don't like Trump because that's the fashionable thing to do on one side of our country. But you got to read it and look if there's any facts to it. And yes, definitely on the border with the illegals, I think that will be a boost. That will be a boost to business immigration because you need law and order. I mean, I have clients waiting years and years. I have all my clients, none of them want to overstay their I-94. None of them want to do anything, even remotely illegal or looking illegal or something that could get them in trouble. And these are the folks that need the services of the USCIS, which is, you're talking about wait time for EAD cards and people have to come off payroll. I mean, these are people too, and they've come here legally. They've paid thousands of dollars. Their companies have filed the right way, and they've taken a back seat to allowing millions and millions of people to come in for what purpose? So that's my opinion on it.
But Erin, do you really believe that it has now become fashionable or cool to say that we are anti-government, especially anti-Trump? We don't believe in his policies or what he says, even though everything that he has said or done has always favored the country.
Well, when I'm talking about, if we're going to talk politics now,
let's just take immigration. I mean, because mostly that whatever policies or actions that he has taken so that so that illegal immigrants cannot get in, and so that the borders are the border policy is strict, so that illegals can't get into the country. But then people don't really favor that idea also and say that he has always been against immigrants. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, his whole platform is that he wants people to come in legally. He wants people to respect the laws of our country. And if you can utilize those laws to come in, then you should. He doesn't want and there should be borders, and there should be places where you enter, and there shouldn't be, drug cartels running in. People leave the crime and the drugs alone. There shouldn't be drug cartels organizing people to come in illegally and finding loopholes because there's no boundaries or no wall or this or that. I mean, no country in the world would ever put up with this. So when he's talking about that, he's not talking about, well, we shouldn't also allow legal immigrants because they're bad. He's never said that. And so the perception that will flow over into business immigration is just completely false. And there's 4 years of evidence of that. And when I try to argue with some of my immigration colleagues who are very, let's just say, anti-Trump or pro-open borders, as I call it, I say, well, why don't you point to something in 4 years, which he's done? And then they talk about, if you remember, during COVID, when they kind of shut down visa processing and a lot of embassies. Well, that was shut down because of COVID. I mean, and that slowed the entire world for traveling. And I come back and I tell them, that's not a good example, because that was a few months, yes, and it was hard maybe to get an H-1B visa, and maybe a few people got stuck abroad here and there. but that was really due to the disease, the COVID that was killing people. And
Yeah.
yes, movement was stopped everywhere by every country. So if you want to argue this, I'll argue with any immigration lawyer who wants to come on here and tell me that these asylum cases are actually legitimate and can show me how, but they won't because they don't have the facts on their side, and as usual. But anyway, not to get into the other side of immigration. We're here for business immigration, and
Right.
I don't see the fear. People who are reading all these articles should just read them with a grain of salt. That's what I'm saying, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Number one, and number two, if you look at the track record, those 4 years, the L's and H's, which is mostly what your audience is interested in, not killed or hampered, or there may have been delays here and there, but that was due to COVID. So just be careful when the fear mongering starts, because the new administration's coming in and one side has simply lost the election. So just be careful. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Thank you so much for that insightful answer, Erin. And a lot of people have joined us and have also posted their questions. So we are definitely going to take their questions. Or maybe let's just start with Hosam's question. So Hosam said he has posted this on YouTube, and he says, I'm a medical laboratory scientist certified ASCP. How can I apply with you?
With me. So as you know, most, whether it's a green card or simply petitions, O1s, and you need a sponsor company. So if this person is a scientist and he's working in the or I guess he's not in the US, I don't know. I always tell him, like, I don't find job. I guess that's your job. But we're a law firm. Our clients are companies, and we can certainly file extraordinary ability or outstanding researcher green cards. There's an O1 category if he meets that. But like I say, most folks outside the US who really don't know much about how the process works, maybe they didn't go to school here, really you need to find that company that wants to hire you. You have to look either in your home country or here, find your field, apply to jobs online. And then at some point, when someone is interested in you and your services, the question will come up if they need sponsorship. That's where I come in. So I'm not going to find jobs for people. We're a law firm. I think you do that. If you're a staffing company, that's probably what you would do. But after they have a job and they're like, okay, now how do I get the person into the US? We want to hire them. Then they come talk to me and we strategize and we find what solution they can have, to work in the US legally. I think that's the person's probably outside the US, I guess.
Right. So Hosa, maybe you can write to me. My email is rajni@staffingly.com. And yes, maybe you can share your profile with us. If we have anything else, anything for you, we are definitely going to get in touch. But thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow-up or a question for Erin, make sure that you post it in the comments below. Meanwhile, let me quickly take Kavya's question, which she has posted on LinkedIn. So Kavya says, Erin, she says, can we expect more jobs for students with H-1B sponsorship? Currently, companies are not ready to take students because they need H-1B sponsorship. Is there an increase in H-1B sponsorship of IT jobs for immigrants?
Okay, so it's hard. Okay, so look, when you're talking about, are there going to be more H-1B opportunities? Are there going to be less H-1B opportunities? That usually goes with the economy. I think now that we're going to have a business savvy administration coming in, we saw the last few years companies like Amazon and Meta, which was Facebook, we saw them lay off. I can tell you, Meta laid off like over 22,000 employees, or one of them in like a 2-year period. Large layoffs, and yes, a lot of them affected H-1Bs. They were in STEM fields, they were in IT fields. I can tell you, we had some of my companies. They were calling me like, hey, we got a new person we're hiring. We got a new person. And they seem to all be coming from Meta. So in terms of answering the overall question, it's hard to say, well, there's going to be more companies are going to want more H-1Bs or less. Companies want talent, and they have roles and jobs they need to fill. They don't care if they're H-1Bs or non-H-1Bs. Now, I can tell you this. If companies are hiring H-1Bs, it's because they really need the talent and it's there. If you think about it, to hire someone who needs sponsorship is going to cost them in terms of lawyers and fees and all the headaches and potential green cards and perm filings and all those fees. If you look at it from a comparison basis, it's going to cost them a lot more, obviously. So if they're willing to spend that, it tells you, and it goes back to the first question you asked me, if they're willing to spend that, they don't have someone equally talented or even right there who's going to cost them $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 less in the long run, which goes to show you that the vast need, and I think it's only going to grow. We can see a lot of movement. I don't know if anyone's out there is doing AI, but a lot of those companies are coming up. And then the traditional companies like, the big FANG like Google and all of them, they're still hiring. Their numbers will fluctuate. I think there's going to be more opportunity, but it's hard to say, it all depends on what you're doing and what field you're in. And then, the market is still good for foreign students coming out and then, sending in resumes and being hired based on their talents. Yeah.
Right. So, Kavya, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. If you have a follow-up, please continue posting your follow-up. We are here with Erin for some time. We'll be taking your follow-ups too. So right now we have questions from Rag, then RK, Ankit Goel, Lokesh. So many questions are here. Guys, I'm definitely going to take your questions and ask it from Erin. But before I do that, Erin, I would also like to know from you that what factors do you believe have contributed to, the decline in H-1B visa approvals in 2024?
The decline in approvals. Well, I can tell you, so are you looking at statistics where you have the top 10 visa filers and like Amazon went down a few thousand? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Amazon and then Google and so many companies actually went down. Yeah.
So if the question is USCIS getting any more stingy or harder to approve? That's not the situation. I will go back to individual company hiring and the economy. When the economy is slow and these companies aren't making what they do, they tend to lay off. So that's probably what happened there. I don't know internally at like Amazon. I don't think they would say, well, we're just going to lay off. Although there are companies who do take a policy I've seen lately where they might say we're not hiring those who need sponsorship. I mean, obviously you can't discriminate, but for business necessity, you can ask that question when you're recruiting people. Will you need sponsorship? So that might be a trend, but I think it's more the economy has been bad. And we're in the last year or two, we're seeing ramifications of some of these big companies just wanting to lay off and making cuts and maybe not hiring as much until they can get back, until the economy can start rolling like it did, prior to the last several years.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with USCIS's strict approach or nothing to do with the government or the law?
No, I file H-1Bs every day. They're very straightforward. Yes, you'll get an RFE. Sometimes you'll get an RFE when it's not warranted, but there's not. I would say it's even easier to get an H-1B approved now than it has been. If you think about third-party client sites, they've completely, in the past, I can remember getting massive RFEs on the third party. Oh, where are they working? They're not working at the company. And they've stopped doing that for the last several years. So we don't see those RFEs anymore. If you got a U.S. degree, they're not going to question the specialized knowledge. Yeah, they'll throw. Those are usually boilerplate RFEs. And you get those and they're unfortunate and they create a little bit of a delay and more cost. But right now, I don't see a huge uptick in those. I can tell you I have seen months in the past where there's so many H-1Bs or a particular year where they're going, but it really doesn't correlate with changes of administration from what I've seen in my experience.
Okay. Thank you so much for answering the question, Erin. Let me again move to our viewers' questions because we are getting quite a lot of them. So let me take maybe RK's question. So RK says, just like the perm process, if you have major layoffs, you can't file new perm. That should be the case. If you do major layoffs, your site should not be eligible, get H-1B for the fiscal year. H-1B is a great program, should help add workers, not substitute. If a company has 10 American workers, then apply for 5 H-1B at the end of the year, that should have 15 workers, not 10 or worst 8. I don't think so there's a question, but this is what he says.
I think
Would you
he's
like to
trying to
add
say
something to
that,
it?
I think he's trying to say that he doesn't want H-1Bs to replace American workers. I mean, I have a lot of clients. I've worked with big companies, small companies. I don't think these recruiters, and I deal with them a lot. I don't think the recruiters are trying to say, let's get this person because we don't want the American, number one. And then he'll make the argument, well, maybe the H-1Bs will work for less, so they're cheaper in the recruitment. I mean, we know about that when we're recruiting. Maybe we can get them cheaper. It's hard to qualify that. I just think if they need more, they're going to hire more workers, and they're going to hire them where they can get them and as fast as they can get them to get them in there. If a company's growing and the IT needs are growing and the AI is growing and all that stuff, then they need them. They're going to find it's a market out there. These recruiters are cutthroat. I mean, and then if you're coming out of school and you have a skill, like lately I saw, like maybe 4 or 5 years ago when AI started to become popular and all those AI jobs. I mean, I remember some of these students would come out and my client would be like, we got to offer them this and the perm and the green card. We got to give them everything because these kids come out of school. They got 3-4 offers. I mean, they got companies after them for these skills. It's amazing. So yeah, I would have to counsel my client and be like, I mean, I'm doing your immigration, but yeah, I can see the talent pool. These guys with these niche talents, guys and girls with niche talents, they're so sought after that you're gonna have to offer them the perm quicker. Some of the companies would start their perm right away, right at even they're doing their EAD and they're on their OPT and they start it right away. So yeah, I just think it's economics basically. Are there cases out there where companies won't think they can fire Americans and hire cheaper labor? Probably it exists, but I think the overall mass numbers are because these jobs are there and these companies need them and they'll get them from wherever they can.
Okay. Thank you so much again, Erin. Let me take. Okay, Rizwan is here. Rizwan says hi. Hi, Rizwan. Please post your question if you have any, and then Dezaljin, I hope I'm taking your name right. I'm sorry if I'm not. He says, hello, everyone. Please post your question in the comments below. And now let me take Rak's question. So here, Rak says, will L1A for a tech non-profit RFE? What do you have to say?
You broke up there. Let me see if I can read that question. Will L1 tech nonprofit face extra scrutiny or even an RFE? L1A for a tech nonprofit. So there's really no difference whether you're filing for an L1A for a nonprofit or a profit. The issue with scrutiny will come whether the company can support the salary of the L1 worker. And is there a structure in place where the L1A will be overseeing professionals or supervisors? So the scrutiny is across the board for L1A. It doesn't matter whether you're a nonprofit or not. That's what they look at. And yes, L1As have been harder over the past 10 or 15 years. They used to be just a piece of cake. You didn't hardly have to file anything. Now, when we do an L1A application, we put in org charts and emails of the manager actually overseeing people, really the nuts and bolts evidence to try to avoid the RFE. When I used to do L1A petitions, there were like 2-3 pages. Now my support letter has gotten to 15 to 25 pages. And I'm trying to avoid the RFE for my client is what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to get everything in there, as much evidence as I can. So you can just see the trends. And, L1B has been traditionally the hardest, application to be approved of all the work visas. And those you really have to put together a very strong L1B argument. It's evolved over the past 20 years from, like I say, maybe 2-3 pages and a little bit of explanation to 15, 20, 25 pages and exhibits like this. So there's been a big evolution in the L1 field, even though there's been really no changes to any L1 restrictions or laws or adjudications or obviously numbers, because there's no limit or lottery on L1. So it's interesting.
Okay, so Rahak, I hope you have got your answer. Thank you so much for your question. Please continue posting your follow-ups. Sita is also here. Sita says hi. Hi, Sita. I hope you're doing well. Please post your questions in the comments below so that we can take it and ask it from Erin. Meanwhile, let me take Ree's question. Reese has posted this on LinkedIn. Reese says, so if most companies are laying off, why do we need to import labor? Does the law have some throttle for economic slowdown?
If most companies are laying off, why do we need to import labor?
Mhm.
Well, we talked about two big companies that had big layoffs in the press. And yes, other companies do lay off from time to time. I'm not sure if most companies are laying off right now. I don't know if that's the fact. But assuming that is the fact, if most companies are laying off, and I guess you're talking about H-1B fields, IT workers, and STEM workers, do we
Mhm.
need to import labor? Probably not. And that might be the reason why Amazon's or H-1Bs went down 3,000 in 1 year, or some of the other companies in the top 10, their numbers went down. That's probably the answer, is they weren't importing labor or sponsoring a lot of H-1Bs. So you might have answered your own question right there. Does the law
Okay.
have some throttle for economic slowdown? I don't know. What do you mean by throttle? Um,
Well, Reese, if you can please, write your question in detail. What do you mean by this? Because I was also trying to figure out what actually this question meant. So maybe if you can explain us what you actually want to know from Erin. Meanwhile, let me take Rizwan's question. So Rizwan says, "Hi, I moved from Pakistan to the USA 3 months ago. I am a front end developer and I have applied for lots of jobs but not received job. Please, any job or intern." Okay, well, again, he says this is about a job opportunity, which I don't think we should be talking about here. um Rizwan, how about you send me an email on my email ID, which is rajni at staffingly.com. Reach out to me there, and I can help you with something if we have an opportunity for you. Okay, so Rag says people manager L1A has better success than functional manager.
okay. Where's the question?
Yeah.
Okay, people manager. Regular L1A has better success than functional manager. I would agree with that.
Mhm.
We do functional manager, but functional manager L1A are much harder to prove. You have to really show that the function of the company that the person is managing um, has some intrinsic value or worth. So, for example, let's say it's a project you're managing. When we do those, and we don't do them a lot because, as he says, they are much harder. But let's say we have to do that because there's simply no management of people in the traditional sense. We would show that project, we would show the financial figures, number one, from that project versus, let's say, what the company's income revenue is. We really have to build a case and show them, yes, they're managing, but it's functional, and how intrinsically valuable this is to the company. And you can do that with
Mhm.
numbers, you can do that with revenue, you can do that with letters. If it's a project management situation where they're managing that project or that function for the company, it can be a project. Then you want to bring in additional evidence, maybe letters from the client, showing the longevity and the importance of the project to the company, how that project, without that project, the company wouldn't exist, or things like that. But yes, they are very hard to do. He's right. The functional manager is very highly scrutinized.
Mm.
That's not to say that the L1As are not scrutinized as well, but it's just a functional manager. You have to really put in the worth of the function that they're overseeing or managing.
Okay,
Um,
so Rag, thank you so much for that comment. And Ankit is also here. Ankit says, my company is filing multiple H-1B petitions for different candidates, including me. How does USCIS determine if a company is trying to game the lottery system? Could my application be impacted even if I'm not involved in any wrongdoing?
So if he's describing a situation where an unscrupulous company is somehow filing multiple H-1Bs illegally for the same person, yes, you could be impacted because even if it's approved, they're doing investigations and they can come back and revoke the H-1B at a later point in time, which means you're going to lose your H-1B, even if you're not even working for that company anymore. An
Mm.
example I gave at the beginning of the show was one of my clients they're working for this company, but now they're challenging how they were picked in the lottery, and was that legal and was that correct? And that's something new. So that's interesting to see. And it's good that they've got people who are looking at this, and they maybe have a better electronic system in place where they can kind of, look at the data and see who's filing for who. And that's why they're asking for your passport number, because they can easily see how many applications were filed for. Maybe 150 applications were filed for one person. They could see that. And that's where they're going to start looking. So that's good for them in their investigative process.
Right. So, this reminds me of a question that actually I prepared for you, Erin. So I want to also know from you, how can applicants actually ensure that their job offers are legitimate and not at a risk of being categorized as fraudulent?
Yeah, that's a good question. Research the company who's offering you a job. See who they are, number one. I guess if you're in India, and there's a lot of companies in India, and some of them are legitimate companies and some of them are not, right? And I guess that's the situation we have here. Some red flags are they're requiring you to pay for your H-1B. You're not supposed to be paying for your own H-1B, number one. So that's a red flag. If you're the company and they're like, hey, yeah, we're going to get you an H-1B, we just need you to pay for it, or we need you to forward us some money here, be wary of that, number one. Number two, ask questions. Where am I going to be working? Where's the job? That should be in place. A lot of times, obviously, the employee is not going to see the contract between their employer and maybe, the client, but try to ask questions around what you're going to be doing, where you're going to be, where's the physical location of the job. If you're an employee and they're filing, you're entitled to see the LCA, although that will come later after you've already decided to go with that company. But your H-1B employees are entitled to a copy of their LCA. They can see everything that's been submitted for them. You should also have a copy of the I-129, which tells the government, here's the job, where it's going to be, what the person's going to be doing, here's the salary. All of that stuff's in the application. So if you're an H-1B, if you're looking to become an H-1B, just research the company, look for some of these red flags, and don't pay money to a company in India who says, yeah, I can get you an H-1B, just we need $500 up front or something. So look for those red flags.
Right. But Erin, do you believe that stricter penalties for fraud will deter companies from questionable practices, or do you think that can happen?
Yeah, I mean, if they're starting to crack down on them and they can actually get these companies and prosecute them, yes, certainly stopping them from filing H-1Bs. The problem is, these companies, they morph. They're one set, and then they find them and they stop them, and then they open up new companies, right? So if they're in the business, if they're in the criminal business of job shopping, they might not even be in the U.S. They can certainly prosecute the ones that are in the U.S. easily, and they have. There's been some cases, you've probably read about them. But if they're overseas and there's a lot of players involved and they're savvy, they simply open up another company tomorrow and they repeat the process, right? But yeah, hopefully they will have more efforts to be able to locate these, and then they prey on the cap lottery. This is their big money maker, right? Every year. So hopefully with all the it's gone electronic, but with all the data that they want, they can do a better job of pinpointing who the lawbreakers are and who are the actual legitimate H-1B filers.
Right. So now with upcoming changes under Trump's administration, what adjustments should applicants anticipate regarding H-1B visa policies?
Okay, like we discussed before, I don't think there's going to be a negative impact to companies filing H-1Bs, adjudications of H-1Bs. I hope it gets better. Just this past year, we have fees on H-1Bs and Ls and other business immigration visas that we've never seen before, called the asylum fee. I don't even know how this is constitutional, because these companies are filing these petitions and they're paying now an additional asylum fee on top of all the other fees we have to pay for the illegal asylum scam program that's going on the border. Now, why that floats into business immigration, I don't know, but you can see there's something that hopefully they will do away with. I don't understand why businesses have to pay an asylum fee for a program that is just overwhelmed and in my opinion is a scam. So hopefully that will go away. That will make things a lot easier for small companies who are already paying exorbitant fees, and now they got to pay an extra $300, and even bigger companies who have to pay $600 for every application, on top of the ACWI fee, the fraud fee, the I-129 fee, and all these other great fees that we have. When I started practicing immigration law, I was in Israel at the time. This must have been around 2000 or 1999. Mm-hmm. The fee for an H-1B was $85. There were no other fees.
Wow.
Now I file a fee for my client. They're looking at almost $5,000, not including premium, for one H-1B. $85, $5,000 premium. I remember when they started the premium program, it was an extra $1,000 or even less. I think that's gone up every year. Now it's $2,800 to add premium to your case. Mm-hmm. Lovely. And USCIS takes in so much money in fees. Just USCIS, if you think about it, if it was run properly, they could make massive profits for the government, but apparently they don't, because now they got to add more asylum fees onto it. So they're not making profits, and the wait times and the client service, in my opinion, in 20 years I've been doing this, has gone like this. Now you can't even talk to. I mean, a year and a half ago, I could at least get someone on the phone. Now they've gone to all these things where you got to email them. They've gone to the lockbox. The lockboxes are just a nightmare. Now they have vendor companies coming in and taking all the mail before it even gets to USCIS. And I can tell you the folks doing that are not the best, let's just say. And these lockboxes are sending cases back at a rate I've never seen in over 20 years. We're getting cases back for the stupidest reasons, for little things here and there. It's just very frustrating what's going on right now. And I'm hoping with all of these efficient people that he's hired to look at USCIS and efficiently clean that up, because that could be a moneymaker with these fees as high as they are. You could be efficient and make money and bring back the client service that we used to have, which wasn't 100% the best, but at least it was some good client service where you could, they make mistakes and clients pay a lot of money. So when you make a mistake and clients pay money, you need to have some client service that can help efficiently. So hopefully that will change for the better as well.
Okay. Well, let's hope that. Thank you so much for answering the question. Erin, RK is back, and this time he says, do you think it would be a good idea to make it that 70% of the H-1B must be granted to individuals like F1 students who have already invested, lived, worked inside the US?
It's interesting. It's an interesting. First of all, as you know, F1 students, if they're in the STEM field, they're going to have 3 H-1B lotteries to make it. Now, most of them do. I do have some. We have some that go 1, 2, and 3, and unfortunately, they get unlucky. So I can see that. I don't know if that would be a solution. Maybe something for F1s where after their STEM OPT was finished, and they could show that they applied for 2 or 3 lotteries and didn't get it. Maybe they could get some kind of extension. That could be a good idea. And then they could keep applying for the lottery. Maybe that could be when you focus on 70%, that might not be fair to other companies who rely on H-1Bs who maybe don't have a lot of F1s. So I have both types of companies as clients. But there's a lot of things they can do. They've talked about in the past making it. You could also say, well, some of these big companies, they get thousands and thousands, and you might be a little company and you only need 1 or 2 H-1Bs. Is that really fair that they're depositing 3,000 or 10,000 H-1B lotteries and you're depositing 3? And maybe all the ones who are small companies should get all those filled before all the big file. Well, that would hurt the big filers. There's been a lot of different proposals on how to make it. They had it they proposed maybe H-1B should go first to the highest salaried applicants. The problem there is now you're going to kill small businesses. Microsoft's and Google's, that'd be great for them because their salaries tend to be very high. But now you're killing the other side of the H-1B filer. So I don't like that. There's a lot of proposals to make it more fair. Right now, as we stand, it's traditionally anywhere from 33 to 40% chance of you making an H-1B law, closer to 40 if you're a master's. If you have a U.S. master's, probably closer to 32 or 33% if you don't have U.S. master's. So those are pretty much the numbers. Now, I can remember one year a few years ago where we didn't have a lottery. I mean, they didn't fill the numbers. That was when the economy was really bad, if you recall. And the H-1B went on. I mean, when I started doing immigration, there was no lottery. Of course, there were 300,000 H-1Bs a year, and they went on year round. So we just filed them whenever they came up. Yes, this lottery system is interesting, but I guess it has to be there because the demand is so high. How else could you have a fair way of intaking them? But I mean, there's a lot of different ideas out there. I don't know what the best one is. It would have to be really thought through and fair to different kinds of H-1B filers.
Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, people can come up with their ideas, but ultimately it will depend upon the government, what they come up with and what they decide to do, right? So thank you so much.
Yeah, F1 students are a big part of, they're already here, number one, and they tend to be very talented in terms of these niche IT fields, even more so than your run-of-the-mill, let's say, H-1B worker at one of the big Indian companies. You know what I mean? These folks are very highly specialized. They're already here. Culturally, they're very attractive. They've already blended in. There's a lot of advantages to them. So maybe they should look at something to help the F1 students a little bit more. The STEM OPT is great. We haven't had that forever. That was new a couple of years ago that came in. Maybe an extension of that, but yeah.
Okay, so actually Lokesh also wants your advice. He says, I have been with my current employer on H-1B for 3 years, but I received a better offer from another company. With the current climate of fraud crackdowns, how likely is that my transfer petition might face extra scrutiny? What can I do to avoid any delays or rejections?
Okay, so H-1B transfer, or what we call H-1B portability cases, is exactly here. You're working and you have a great job offer and you want to jump ship. You want to move to the new company. So first of all, the first thing to note is that your current employer will not see the new H-1B application. They have no way to see that. So your current employer will never know that you talked to a new company or that even the new company filed an H-1B for you. So as long as you're staying with your current employer and don't tell them anything, you really don't have any jeopardy of losing your current job. That's why a lot of the we do a lot of H-1B ports. When the H-1B workers are porting, they always want premium because they want to have the H-1B approval in their hand. Mm-hmm. So first of all, H-1B ports can start working when the application is filed. They don't have to wait for the approval, which is great. However, a situation like this, where you already have a good job and you got another good job, is going to file an H-1B for you. This guy wants premium so that he can have the approval notice before he says anything to this job. I understand. It's a sense of security because you could start working with the other employee based on the approval, based on the filing, and then something can go wrong in that application. Now you screwed yourself, and you're going to be really screwed. So yeah. So if the new employer could file in premium, that might be good for you. That way you don't even have to involve your current employer until you have a new approval notice, and then you can move. That's usually what's been going on. That's what we see most of the time. My client gets a new one. They're like, yeah, but they want premium. And then the client's like, well, I don't want to spend $3,000 if I don't have to. They can start working with me now. I'm like, yeah, but a lot of these port H-1Bs will not start with you until they have that a little bit of the security of knowing they have that approval notice.
Right. Okay,
now, if you're talking about, go ahead, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
If you're talking about fraud crackdowns based on what's going on with the lotteries, that can come and hit you. If you were involved in a lottery with an unscrupulous company and you feel that maybe they were doing something, they were one of these, what I call job shoppers, then you got to be careful. That could come back and hit you at any time. That's out of your control. You're not going to know what investigations are going to be done against a company that you had an H-1B with 2 years ago, and then they're going to bust them, and now they're going to revoke every single H-1B they had. And then, yes, you could be affected by that. So.
Yeah, right. So thank you so much for that advice and for that answer. Erin, Lokesh, I hope. And Erin, we also have questions which are posted by the view on a Facebook group. So if you allow, I would like to share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
If it's possible
I can
for
run
me
over. I have
to
time.
share.
I can answer questions. That's fine if you want to
Me
go a little
fine?
longer. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, I would like to share my screen. Okay. So this is one group where people have posted questions regarding H-1B. So this anonymous member says, because of long waiting time of NIW, okay, this is, I think, an EB1. Maybe let's take H-1B related question. Okay. Kaushik has posted this 14 minutes ago, and he says, hi all, if you valid visa until April 2025 and have renewed H-1B petition till April 2028, you are good to enter US with the existing visa along with renewed petition without restamping with new petition, right?
As long as the visa is valid, unexpired visa, correct. So let's say I work for company A, I have a visa for 3 years. I port to company B, I got an approval notice, and now I want to travel. With the new approval notice of company B, you can use the visa from company A as long as it's valid. In my example, it's valid for 3 years. Yes, you can keep using that visa to go in and out, even though you're not working for company A anymore, but you must have the approval notice for company B to show them every time you enter if you don't want to get a new visa stamp.
Okay.
But the visa always has to be valid. You can't come in on an expired visa. That's one thing you cannot do.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Kaushik, I hope you have got your answer. Let me quickly read. Okay. So actually, we've been continuously getting questions on this group. Please respond fast. I have doubt. I have Dropbox appointment today. My pay stubs have old pay and company didn't mention my new salary in employment verification letter. And in Dropbox, they won't ask my revised offer letter, but I have it. How will they know about my new salary? What should I need to do?
If you've already submitted everything in the Dropbox, there's nothing you can do. They're going to send, you've already submitted your passport. They'll send it back to you with the new visa. If they have a problem, they'll let you know. Getting increased salary is not a big deal. In fact, if you're an H-1B in the U.S. and you've gotten a huge jump in salary, we don't file H-1B amendments for that.
Okay.
So I don't panic. This person's panicking too much.
Right. So maybe they need to calm down a bit.
Yeah.
It happens because you have just applied for the visa, so that's fine. This anonymous member says, can I get stamping to passport, which will be expired in 7 months? Once stamped, I can get passport renewed and can fly to US from India with all new passport and valid stamping.
Yes. If you have let's say you got an H-1B visa, but then the passport expires, but the visa's still good, you get your new passport, you travel with both passports, and he will look at the visa in the old passport, and you can travel like that. Correct.
Okay. So, okay, this person says, hi guys, I worked with DXE Technologies in India, which was an HP enterprise back then. Now I skill set. Okay, no, this is not related to. Hello, please assist me in understanding the table. Okay, this is again a table. Okay, this person says, I got NOIR, H-1B after USCIS site visit. Any idea how long will it take for USCIS to take final decision? Employer replied for the notice.
So the NO notice of intent to revoke was received, and the employer already responded to them. And that was outside a regular filing. I guess or was it a premium case that was filed?
Not much details I hear,
Well,
but
I mean, if it
it
was
says H-1B after USCIS site visit.
after a site visit, okay.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Those can sit for a long time. I guess there's no premium in play here. So if they've responded, it's hard. it could be all over the map. It could be a couple months. I don't know. We've had those that have pended for a long time, and we were like, wow. I mean, the good news is you're still working and you don't have to leave or anything. So
Okay.
It's hard for me to get timelines are the hardest questions I have from my clients, because you can look online and see timeframes, and those are usually not really good. And then someone's asking you, well, when am I, it's not premium. When am I going to get my case? And we can look at trends, but it's hard to really give really good pinpointed timelines of when you'll, outside of premium, of when you'll get cases back. It's tough. That's a very frustrating part of it.
Okay. So, all right. Thank you so much for answering these questions, Erin. I think we have had a great show with you. We did try to cover a lot of questions, though still a lot of them are pending, but we still try to cover a lot in today's episode. So thank you so much for being here. And to our lovely audience, I would like to say that if you would like to get in touch with Erin, please give him a call on the number. I would like to display on screen, or maybe I would like to request a control to display on screen.
Yeah, 469-459-1771. That's the office. You can reach me.
Right. So please give Erin a call on the number if you're trying to get in touch with him. His number is 469-459-1771. I would like to repeat it, 469-459-1771. You can also email him. His email ID is erin@eeglawgroup.com. And you can also visit his website, which is www.eeglawgroup.com. Yes, you wanted to add something to it, Erin. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say, if you're calling me, I can give you advice and help you. But if you're really looking for a job and you don't have an employer, we're a law firm. You need to, find some recruiting companies. After you have an employer in place and maybe a job offer, and you need assistance or you have questions, I can answer those questions. But I can't. I sometimes we get questions where they're just looking for a job, and it's we're not in that business. So
if you're looking for a job, guys, you can get in touch with me. My email is rajni@staffingly.com. And if you're looking for any immigration, looking for help related to your immigration related case, so for that, please get in touch with Erin. We have already displayed his information and also have read the information for you so that you can note it down. So make sure that you get in touch with Erin as soon as possible. And thank you so much for joining us today. Erin, thank you so much for being here. It was lovely having you. Maybe we can have you for another episode so that we can cover more questions in that show. But thank you so much for being here again today.
No problem. Good talking to you. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much for your questions. Please continue posting them, because whenever Erin is going to be back, we are going to take those questions in that episode, or maybe we can directly ask him by writing an email to him asking for the answer. So we are going to reply to your questions in the comments below. So you make sure that you continue posting your questions in the comments below. But for now, that's it from my side. I'll have to take your leave for now. I'll be seeing you again tomorrow. But for now, thank you. Keep watching and keep subscribing to Immigration and Jobs Talk Show. Bye for now.